All right, so good to have you back. And everything we'll be talking here would be politics with emphasis on the 2022 by-elections here in Cross River State. Let's not forget what is happening here in Cross River is also taking place in 3 other states. But in Cross River, Ogoja Yala Federal Constituency will be going out to vote their leaders and also having the state constituency election. And joining us on set to look at all of this morning, we have a seasoned politician. She is a lawyer, a development consultant, one-time ambassador to Ethiopia, and a one-time House of Reps member covering Calabar Municipality and Odukbang. That is a woman of no mean feat. We have in the studio Her Excellency Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo. Good morning, Your Excellency. Good to have you on set.
Thank you very much to have me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Let's quickly start with today's by-elections. This has been long coming. We'd love to get your thoughts on these 2022 by-elections in Cross River State.
Well, thank you very much. The by-election, as expected, was it's not a surprise. It's been coming for the last couple of months. We first of all had the senatorial elections, and now we have the by-elections to replace the 2 ladies who passed on, unfortunately. We knew about the Honorable Lady Ayonba, who was laid to rest yesterday. She died in October. And before then, we also knew about the passing away of Senator Rosoko, who died over a year ago. So these things have been waiting, and it's just a question of time. And the time has come. Maybe the little unfortunate part of it, I'll say, is that we only got about a month's notice about the date, the actual date, but in terms of it being a process that was already in the calendars of different persons, I think that was something we knew about. That being said, it's the first time in Cross River State we're going to have a very competitive election. Hitherto, we were seen largely as a one-party state, and so we didn't tend to have that intensity of engagement with the polity. But I think this time around, we've seen a very unusual interest from both parties, candidates going around to try and market and sell their products and their wares and what they represent to the electorate. So it's a very different season, and I think to that extent, it's a very warm season for us as a state.
Okay, so let's look at this now. For the 2 positions or 2 seats that is being competed for, were hitherto, occupied by women, Rosoko and Elizabeth Ayonba. But the unfortunate thing or surprising thing is that we're seeing men competing for these positions right now. Where are the women?
In both elections, women participated actually in the primaries. In Ogoja Layala, there was a Margaret Ode who competed, but unfortunately she didn't get the ticket. And in the APC in Akpavio, we had Dr. Genevieve Banabe, who also competed. So women did compete, but unfortunately, like the institutional barriers for women are huge. They are not just cultural; they are much more than cultural. They are inherently structural within the. I mean, I could write a book on the structural nature of these barriers. It's not just a barrier for women, but women tend to have a larger portion or weight on it because when you look at how the perception is, even ab initio, is that a woman cannot compete. I get to hear about that all the time personally, that, oh, you're running for this and running for that, can you compete with the men? So it's also a cultural thing, but at the same time, when you get past that cultural, what do you call it, cultural insinuations and cultural undertone, you'd also deal with the structural issues inside the party, and that structural issue tends to also make it difficult for many people to cross. Once you are, oftentimes in every election, there's a preferred candidate of or aspirant of the so-called leaders of the party, and that tends to have a weight in the way and manner in which party men and women respond to those issues. And if the aspirant, be it man or woman, is not seen as being the favored one, even the electorate tend to be a bit swayed or in the one direction or the other within the party I'm talking about now. So that's interesting.
Okay, Your Excellency, let's still look at the barriers, especially the one you just raised, the institutional barriers, on the women. Let's look at Cross River State as a scenario. We've enjoyed unbroken democracy since 1999. We'd love you to talk to us. How would you say the women have fared so far politically?
Compared to many states, I would say Cross River State hasn't done badly, but compared to national and regional figures, we are definitely extremely at the bottom of any indicators of progression. When you look at the numbers of women in parliament, Nigeria seems to have some of the lowest in the world. We have only 6% thereabout in the National Assembly. And that is significantly low compared to a country like Rwanda that has over 50% of their parliament made up of women. And in many countries, it is hovering between 30, 40% and thereabout. And so when you look at the 6% population, 6% representation, for a country of over 200 million people, for a country of such capable and endowed women, you begin to ask yourself, what's going on here? Why are these women who sound so educated, sound so knowledgeable, come across as being very strong and focused and capable? Why are they not getting into the leadership? And it's questionable. The question is what I just talked about. It's a structural problem. There are few people who control the party, and when they control the party, they also become the ones who determine who gets in and who gets out.
Okay, so when you talk about...
And not just one party, it's across all the parties in Nigeria.
When you talk about structural problems, don't you think that it goes way beyond that? Because for Cross River State, for example, we have women who are in elective positions and leadership positions as well. But don't you also think that maybe women are not willing to come out, to present themselves?
That's what I call structure. What makes women unwilling to come out? Is it because they are not educated? Is it because they carry a different head? Or is it because their bodies are differently structured? Can be. God doesn't endow one and doesn't endow the other.
Okay, when you talked about structure, I thought it was maybe party structure.
No. Structural issues, the society, these things come with codes.
Okay.
I mean, if you go to a certain society, it says a woman cannot do this. It's a structural thing, because everybody just assumes that's what it is. I mean, I am ethic, and I know how many times who are the people sending you on this message? It's in your head. It's wired somewhere, and you will just continue to replay it. So the structural issues are sometimes things we don't very clearly. It's insidious. It comes straight through us. We inhabit it. We take it. We make it our own, when in fact it is what constrains us. And when those things you call constraints come from those structural impediments that exist. What we mean by structural is something that takes a combination of many things to come together to make it impossible for the one person to break out. If we were to say a question of, I want to go to school, I can break out from my family values or family society and go to school. But it doesn't mean that in breaking out to go to school, I have changed that society that said, as a woman, I shouldn't have gone to school. I broke out and went, but the society is still where it is. And this is a society that says, you shouldn't have gone to school. And in a way, I have internalized it, and I'm saying, I have broken out of that society. What made that society continue to say that? Those are structural issues.
Okay, Your Excellency, you are the founder of Gender Development Action, GADA, and you have so much influence on the girl child and on the women. We're hoping that with your push, we will see a structural difference pretty soon on the side of the women. Maybe very soon we'll see Nigeria too in the side of Rwanda, also having at least the 50-50.
Well, truth must be told. The women have had this struggle for decades now, and have been part of the mainstream struggle at the national level. It's gladdening to announce that the First Lady was in the National Assembly 2 days ago to support the position of women on constitutional reforms. And in that reform that has now gone before as a report. It hasn't even gone for debate yet. So this is the beginning of the debate. But basically her presence in the National Assembly was to say, you know guys, I am behind these provisions that you have in the report for women, and I hope that you will see it through to its logical end. The debates will start, I think next week, Wednesday, and once the debate starts, we'll see whether it will be shut down or it will be approved or it will not go through clause by clause. We'll go through the clauses of the report, because this is just the work of the committee. Don't forget, the Committee on Constitutional Reform that has included some of these provisions, and some of the very interesting provisions in that report is one, that at least there will be one woman extra and for the national, and one woman extra for every state for the constituencies. So we're going to have a whole new layer of what they call reserve seats for women, which will be a good way of not having to have men compete for that seat. Only women will compete for that seat. So that generates some sort of pool of women who immediately begin to get into the National Assembly, in the National Assembly or the States Assembly. Bear in mind, this is just a report. It has to be debated. It has to be approved. It has to go to the 36 states of the country, because it's a constitutional matter, and we have to have the majority by 2/3 saying that we are in agreement with this clause and this clause can pass. Without that, it can't pass through. And then the structural issues begin to step up. Some people are going to say in their states, we don't accept this, this is not our culture, this is not our religion, it's not allowed, it's anti-constitution. So these are debates that are coming into the future. Now for me, what I have done, and I continue to do, apart from my personal decision to step forward, and I continue to encourage many young people that running is not about winning. It's sometimes just about, for them, it's not, for me, it is about winning, definitely, so that I don't get this wrong. But if you recall my history, I have gone through these elections a couple of times, and that's why I now have the confidence to get to where I am and be able to run. For many women, they need to remember that these structural situations, they have to break out of it. And part of the breaking out is the experience that they need to have in order to have the confidence to go forward with their aspiration. So there are steps to these things that we are dealing with. And these steps are not easy steps, but I am encouraging a lot of women, and I'm asking them, step out, step out, step out. The first thing to do with yourself is to get past the fear of being able to compete. And this fear is not just peculiar to women, it's also there with men as well. So it's something that we shouldn't be mindful of in the long term. So that's something to
definitely. Okay, Your Excellency, because at the end of the day, when we see that get to, fusion, we hope to appreciate people like you that have been very vocal about the women coming into the fore. You have been actively involved in politics for several decades now, and today is the morning of the by-elections. What do you think people around Akwa-Abuyo or Gojayala should be expecting, at least on the election morning?
They should be expecting that they can go to their polling units. They should be expecting that the materials will be there. They should be expecting that the BVAS machines will work, and they will be able to be identified, and they will be able to be accredited. They will be able to cast their votes, and they will be able to leave the venue of the polling unit assured that their votes will count, and at the same time that they are safe and not exposed to any dangers to their life, threats to their personal well-being, as well as bodily harm. So these are some of the things that they should be expecting. They should be hopefully seeing a good dose of security operatives and officials around, which are enabling, who are acting in an enabling capacity and not being an impediment to the smooth flow of the elections. They should be expecting that at the end of the day, the votes will count, and that a winner will emerge from this election. Whichever person wins will be the choice of the people, and that choice will be upheld by INEC. I think this is what every normal person will expect on an election morning. There will be some restrictions in the areas affected, but overall, for me, this is what I think most people will be looking out for.
Okay, let's come back to the political scene and environment in the state right now. Like you rightly said, we were once a one-party state, and today we see two big parties competing against each other, trying to sell their wares. What does it mean for Cross Riverians, to be having this moment in time? Is this good for, our political terrain in the state?
Oh, definitely. The democracies grow when they are competing. You do too. For anything to grow, think about it. Even for you to grow as a person, for every new challenge you have, you grow with the challenge. So the state is itself growing with this challenge. Definitely, it's good. It's good because it will then help us to rethink what our values. When we say we're a peace-loving state, this is the moment to test our peace-lovingness. So this is again an aspect of it that we need to bear in mind. Just to add that it's not just a two-party election. There are some other parties. I don't want to call them smaller parties. I want to say there are other parties we probably are not talking about who are in this election, and it's important that INEC and ourselves bear in mind that these are also participants in the election. Whether they will end up winning the election or not, the secondary question, but I think we mustn't rule out the fact that this environment now allows for more competition. It allows for a deepening of the experience in terms of its management for INEC, but also in terms of the citizen, the bipartisan citizenry actions that will take. Bipartisan in the sense that you're not used to talking across party lines, but you've seen in the last couple of weeks people coming out publicly to speak out, some of it very hostile, some of it very friendly, but these are things that we haven't been open to in the past, and it's beginning to play up. My little disappointment more is that we still haven't driven it on issues. I had expected that people would put out their credentials more. I've seen one or two attempts at people talking about the credentials of the aspirants, but that hasn't been the dominant narrative. I think, and hopefully as we become a more competitive environment for the politics of our state, that those issues will begin to define the way we make our choices and who we choose. Because in the end, what we really want as a state is good governance. That's what we're going for, and that's what we should be driving for.
So, okay, now that, remember that sometime last year, precisely May 20, His Excellency had to move away from the umbrella party to the broad party. Are you anticipating any influence on this electoral process?
Well, if by influence you mean that will his departure from the PDP impact on the fortunes of the APC, I would say certainly. He has brought much more direction and much more stability to the APC. But whether they will be able to win the election, I think the verdict is out there for the people to give us. But if you ask me as someone who still remains under the umbrella, I would say give or take, it will be a shock for me to see that the APC wins. There's too much structural issue. Again, back to structural.
Yeah.
I have been voting PDP all my life, and suddenly a new party comes. The recognition, the brand recognition is a big problem to start with. So it will take quite a lot for anybody. Even the funny part of it is that all the people who are going down into the field to ask for these votes were once PDP. So, it's easy for me to sit in my village or my rural area or my community and vote PDP, thinking that that person I wanted was actually a PDP person, because all along the person has been in the PDP, and only in the last couple of months has the person made a shift from the PDP to another party. So there are all those confusing signals out there. But I think for me as a PDP person, and this is an honest analysis that will come from any logical, objective analysis of the situation, there's a history to what the PDP has done in the state, history both in terms of its performance and its delivery on programs, but also in terms of its understanding and its long-standing familiarization with how elections are done and managed. And I think that at the end of the day, that will be a strong resource for the PDP to return to and use it in this election. I'm not ruling out the possibility of others playing a strong game here, but I would be pretty surprised if that situation is not what happens. I certainly believe that, not just because I am PDP, but an objective mind. For 24 years, you've been doing a certain kind of thing. Even if you're a toddler, in 24 years, you probably have a son or a daughter, and you're beginning to grow in that understanding. And then compare that track record and history to someone who has just joined in the last 1 or 2 years. The last outing of the APC was quite disjointed. It wasn't coordinated, so it's difficult for them to build on that disjointed past and take the advantages which they should have taken in a subsequent election. But let's see what the outcome of today is. The verdict will be out there in a short time, and all of us will see it.
Okay, so I think this just crossed my mind because one of the narrative out there is that, we have to start voting for personalities now and not just party. So the issue of anti-party may just play out in certain elections.
Yeah, I said so at the beginning. I said so at some point. I said I wish it was more issues-based, and we haven't had enough time to drive this on the issues. And the issues would mean the performance of the both parties, in comparative performance of both parties. Party still matters. It's not personality alone. If I come out and the PDP, I will also run on the performance of the PDP. In addition to my own personal capabilities, I will run on the performance of the PDP. So the two things work together. We don't disconnect, we don't dissociate the two. The second thing increasingly is that there's going to be a manifesto, at least I know that for the PDP. There's going to be a manifesto for this election where the PDP is saying, vote for me because this is what I want to do for you as a party. And once that manifesto is superior to the manifesto of other people, there may be people who get up and say, on the basis of just comparing what they are promising us, I think this party is promising me something better than the other party.
But we've seen situations where people come up with very beautiful manifestos and, when once they get into office, they dump it and do something else.
True,
so
but would you but would you rather go to an election with no manifesto at all? Because somebody else in the past has not lived up to it.
The point is, why would people present a manifesto and not live by their manifesto?
Because we haven't also demanded of the people we voted for to be accountable to those manifestos. It is also the responsibility of the electorate to say, you did not live up to your life. I mean, to be honest, if we go with this discussion, I may say some things that may not be very pleasant. If we go with this discussion, the APC made promises. What the electorate should do is to just say to the APC, you failed on your promise. We're not voting you again.
We
don't care.
has also failed in your promises.
Okay, let's compare the notes. That's where these things go,
Okay, definitely. We will just have to allow the electorate go out there and give the result. But Your Excellency, there's a question I would love to quickly bring up now. Would the outcome of today's by-election in any way impact on the 2023 general elections?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's a confidence booster. If you win an off-season election, for example, you begin to make the track. You begin to make it, even in the eyes of the followership, particularly the party members, you are already creating the impression that you are a much more established party. Nobody likes to lose an election. So the language that this takes into the next election is a powerful one. And I think that that's why, for the first time, we're seeing it so deeply contested, because it's also about it's a sort of weighing of the capabilities of the two parties and how they are perceived by the populace already. So is this a statement of endorsement of one party over the other, or is it just a question of a preference for a particular candidate over the other? These are all underlying conversations that are going on.
Let me also find out. Let's move away from the outcome of the result. Let's look at those who have been saddled with the responsibility to conduct election, and that is INEC. INEC, at least for the last couple of years, there's been this concept about them inconclusive elections. That's been what has really, defined this INEC led by Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Do you have confidence? Do you think Cross Riverians have confidence in INEC?
I think after yesterday, it would be foolhardy for anybody to say we don't have confidence in INEC. INEC had pushed very hard for the president to sign the Electoral Amendment Act, which he has now signed. They didn't shy away from those far-reaching provisions that are in this Electoral Act. I would say to Nigerians, if you doubted them before, it is time to begin to have much more confidence in them, because they have demonstrated by their support of the electoral reforms that they want to see They want to have more capabilities to be able to deliver on a transparent and credible election. If you didn't want to do it, you wouldn't be the one pushing for it. So they have pushed for it. I remember there were people who said, oh, you don't have the capabilities to transmit electronically because blah, 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 you don't have access to the internet. And they stood up and said, we are able to do this thing. And I think, for me, that's a powerful statement. And I have confidence that they want to live up to the expectation of what this new act is asking them to do. On the question of inconclusive primaries or inconclusive elections, that was the trend very much in 2016. We saw a lot of that in 2016. However, in this particular election, the new Electoral Act, which incidentally is already in operation because as at yesterday it became law, clearly says that the responsibility or the goal of INEC first and foremost is not to disenfranchise anybody. So what happens with inconclusiveness is sometimes certain areas are okay, let me step back on that. Inconclusiveness doesn't always mean that it disenfranchises, but it is usually because there's an emergency, there is a disruption, there is something in the insecurity, there is a threat to life and property and all of those types of things. And I think any reasonable, responsible organ will take a decision on what to do in the face of that, including the risk to the life of the officials, which are staff of INEC. So they have a responsibility towards their staff and not just towards the electorate that wants to vote. So there are issues there. And I don't think any of us should downplay the importance of these issues of insecurity and the possibility of loss of life. I personally have issued a statement yesterday. In that statement, I said that nobody should gain or benefit from the loss of life of another person. I mean, let's face it, why should my victory be on account of the death of another person? So INEC does have a responsibility there. But that being said, what they try to do, and I think that because there's so much of these timelines now that have gone into this new Electoral Act, it kind of gives you boundaries on how long you have to do one thing over the other. It puts a new pressure on INEC to say we cannot stay inconclusive for too long. We have to quickly return to those areas that were affected by insecurity or whatever and rerun the elections. It's got cost implications, it's got other implications, but think about it. In a different time, you can run that election with less insecurity or less problems of emergency nature. So I imagine, and also this is only when it is likely to affect the results. If on the face of it, without that section that has been taken out or that was affected by violence or whatever, the election is already won overwhelmingly by a candidate. You don't have to come back and say, look, let's go and do a rerun, except the person who is losing can show that if you add the value of that, it's going to upturn the election. But if I cannot show, say for example, the polling unit that is affected had 1,000 votes, and I am already defeated you with 6,000. Even if I gave you the whole of the 1,000, you still wouldn't win the election. So in a situation like that, it becomes very secondary for INEC to do anything about it. But I think that in this new law, they try to tighten things a lot more. They have given themselves a lot of timelines. They've given themselves a lot of prep time. And when I say prep time, now you have to give them the more for the election 1 year before. So there's a lot of prep time that's gone into all of this. And I think that INEC is probably going to see a lot less of these situations where this is conclusive. But again, this is maybe me speaking too early, because when you're thinking about a national general election, which is happening in many locations at the same time, the question of what amounts to conclusiveness and inconclusiveness will be very different. But I think it's very important that we protect life and not expose people to bodily harm and possibly death.
Okay, let's look at the role the courts plays, because definitely by the time the election is over, results start trickling in and over with, you see a lot of people, going to the election tribunal to contest, results and all. Has the court really lived up to its expectation in all of this?
It's a very subjective question. It depends on which one you're looking at, in which context you're looking at. There are contexts in which the court has really been revolutionary in defining the direction of the democratic practice. They've helped us to clarify certain baggages that were in the politics itself, and they've helped also to intervene in situations which could have led to unusual outcomes. But that said, there are also situations which have led to questions, big questions about the meddlesomeness. And there's a big debate going on out there now whether the courts should at all make a declaration as who the winner is. I think there is now a push that whatever the courts do, they must come short of giving us a winner in any election, because that is not the role of a court. That is the role of the electorate. There's a push to that. The courts can argue that the process was faulty. The courts can argue that the outcome was mismanaged or manipulated and all sorts of things, and maybe direct INEC to do a rerun, never come to the point of saying this is who the winner of that election is. There's that big debate out there going on, and I've been involved in a couple of them in the recent past. But yes, you make an important point about the courts. If anybody goes to an election in Nigeria today and does not take the issue of the post, I mean, the elections are like this. You have to think of the pre, the actual, and the post. Anybody who goes to an election without those three components definitely hasn't started working in Nigeria. Because the end result, if you expect that at the end of any election, the courts will not step forward, or people will not step forward and go to court, I think that would mean a disservice to yourself and a disservice to your party. So I believe the parties that are involved in these elections already have prepared themselves with all the ammunition they need to step forward as soon as the result of the elections are in the public domain. So the court is very much a part of it, and we must be ready for it. From next week, you'll see many people going to court. And this is happening in 3 states. So we are expecting that will happen. And for me, these days, I think that that's a natural consequence of any election that we go to. So PDP, APC, even Labour may say that certain things were done which didn't take them into account, and they are limited to go to court.
But again, you know, the issue of money politics has played a big role now, especially in the courts.
Before we get to money politics, sorry, because most of the outcomes that from the courts, you know, plays negatively on the electorate. And this brings about political apathy. Before we get to the money now, let's look at political apathy, because if you get down to Akpabuyo or Gojayela, some people are selling their farms, some are playing football on the streets. So let's look at political apathy. How did we get here? Because the court also has a part to play in this political apathy. The political parties equally, the candidates equally. The INEC, are they really educating the people? So let's look at political apathy, Your Excellency.
I think you're going to drag me into a conversation which I have to be careful here, because you know, these things are all interwoven. When I talk of structural issues, they are all interwoven. If you have a party which is driven by a certain culture of politics, the godfathers, the strong leaders determine, sometimes the people they bring up, or most times the people they bring up, are not the popular choice of the people. So immediately the people lose interest. They look at the candidates on the polling, at the what do you call it, on the ballot box of both parties, on the ballot paper for both parties, or 3, 4 parties, and they ask themselves, which one of these ones inspires me in any way? And they don't find any inspiration, so they move away. In the Anambra election, apart from the insecurity in Anambra, the iPod generated insecurity in Anambra, only 10%. Only 10% of the registered voters in Anambra produced a governor. So if you had 1 million voters, for example, in Anambra, only 100,000 participated in that election to produce a governor. That's appalling. So all that pitching with all those big names, there were so many big names that people were tired of. I don't want to mention them. They were billionaires. They had money. So they were just branding their money and jumping into the elections and the world. And people just looked at it and said, what has this got to do with anything that has to do with me? So they walked away from it, apart from the insecurity in Anambra State. So you'd write on apathy. Apathy is a product of this structural thing. If we had parties that would say, let the popular choice just walk forward, you will see that people will just pour out. That guy on the football field would have said, it's my man, it's my woman, let me go and do something about it. Popular choice is not happening in Nigeria. And we have done, there's a group called ANAP, the Atedo Peter Side project, something like that. He does a lot of polls, analysis, and things like that. A study has come out to say that most Nigerians, young, educated Nigerians, are saying that they would not vote. Why? Because they haven't seen candidates that inspire them. And others are saying that they will not vote because even if they were to vote, their vote will not make any difference and nothing will change. So there is a connection between the two. And these are things which we need to deal with, you understand? So you're right, there's apathy. And I hope we do not see that in Cross River State today. And I hope that the 2023 elections will come with a lot more viability than it has done before. And that's why if you look at what's going on in Cross River, there are quite a diversity of persons who are coming out to run. Let's hope that that diversity will also become a part of our elections in 2023 so that people are excited enough to come out.
Okay, so I think we'll just bring you back to the court issue now. And, sometimes these politicians, after election, talking about post-election now, they just sit down and wait to go to court. Why?
It's part of the game. You want to win. Like I told you, it's only someone who's silly, or let me not use the word silly, who is unprepared, that will not have a plan that has pre-election, during election, and post-election. And the post-election phase, that's why the law provides for it. The law has a lot of provisions to cover the post-election phase. The law knows that elections are going to be very contentious, and the law is trying to make sure, and that's one thing the Electoral Act has done with these timelines, so that your pre-election and your post-election, they have now said you cannot bring any pre-election matter once the election has happened. So if you were planning that you were going to use pre-election matters to disqualify somebody who's already won an election, then you didn't do anything about it. You sat on your rights and waited, and then you came after that. The new Electoral Act has cleaned out some of those things, and that's part of the beauty of where we are today. But so it's a part of the game. The courts are very much a part of the game.
Okay, it brings me back to the issue of money that I raised earlier on. Now, a lot of people go to the court, and it's more
Janice,
like.
sorry, just quickly hang your thought. We have a message from the back room that we have to go on a very short break. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Don't go anywhere. All right, so good to have you back. Indeed, I just wanted to go take some water, and we still have in the studio Her Excellency Ambassador Nkoyotoyo. She is a Nigerian politician, a lawyer, a development consultant, a one-time ambassador to Ethiopia, and also House of Reps member covering Calabar Municipality and Odukbangi. And we're still talking the by-elections here in the studio of CRBC. Your Excellency, so good to know that you're still here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, before we went on that break, Janice brought some points up.
We were still talking about the court issues, people just waiting for elections to be over, and then they just march to courts. And then the issue of money, they keep so much money and know that, okay, so it's more like the highest bidder takes it all.
I mean, you can't get it at the field, you get it at the court.
You get it at the courts.
Let me just start by letting you know that no higher bidder gets anything. Forget it. Forget it. It has nothing. Anambra politics should tell you that if it was about the highest bidder, what's his name, something Okonkwo, who had invested for 2 years into the election, earnestly millions and millions and millions, should have gotten it. The guys who got Soludo and all of them who got the tickets were not the highest bidders. So the highest bidder story is a fallacy. And the money story is a fallacy too. You need some money. You need some money. Let me tell you that. You need some money. Don't be under any illusion that you don't need money. If it was about money, all we could have done would have been to throw the thing on the table. Whoever has the money should come and pick it up. Of course, you know that's not what happens. So it's about what I call the leaders and the gatekeepers and the people who control the structures of the party. That structure you were talking about, those structures of the party, those who control the structure, they are the ones who decide on who gets what. And that's where the important story lies, really. But yes, money is important, but money is definitely like 40% of the reasons why people get into any election.
Okay, Your Excellency, let me quickly take you up on this. Maybe we will be doing a wrap on this segment pretty soon. In Akpabio, with due respect to the Labour Party, we have two major contenders in Akpabio and in Ogojayala. In Akpabio, we have Basil Ekpo-Effium, and from the PDP and APC, we have Dr. Eken is the APC.
Is it PDP guy?
Is the PDP guy, yes. I just got it mixed up somewhere. Then Ekpo is the APC guy. Then at the other side, in Ogojayala, we have Jude Ngaji on the APC side and Michael Sibe on the PDP. Do you think that at the end of the day, this gentleman, whoever would win, will accept defeat, just like Jonathan, and not say we reject the result and all of that? Let's look at, do you think whoever wins will accept, whoever loses would also accept?
I think it depends on the circumstances. If the elections are largely flawed, and you lose in a flawed election, it's very likely that people are going to point to that flaw and say that we want to challenge it. But if it is largely peaceful and you lose in a largely peaceful election, I don't see why anybody should get up and not accept the outcome. In the end, somebody will accept. But the mode of acceptance is a question that we have to look at once we're through with the elections.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Koyotoyo, a Nigerian politician, a lawyer, a development consultant, a former ambassador to Ethiopia, and House of Reps member, Calabar Municipality, and Odubang. We must really thank you for your time on the show, and we like your confidence in your party. All we say is good luck. Good luck. Until the CRBC studio of the by-elections don't go away, very shortly we'll be having a talk with the #1 legislator in Cross River State. Don't go away.